Welcome. So in a few weeks' time, if you haven't realized it, perhaps you have because you plan your holiday, um, we're going to have a long weekend. And Australians love Easter long weekend because they got Friday off and Monday off. But there's so much more to Easter than just really long weekend. And in a few weeks' time, millions of Christians around the world will be celebrating Easter. The Bible call it Passover. So when you read about Passover in our passage this morning, it talks about Easter. So during this time, every Sunday, from now on, from last week actually, we will be looking into this account that we call the Passion of Jesus Christ or the Passover. So last week we started that journey. Jesus was arrested. Remember that? Jesus was arrested in the garden in the middle of the night when he was with his disciples. Hundreds of soldiers came to arrest one man, unarmed. So that was last week. What happens next is what our passage today tells us. That is that the trials of Jesus that is taken place illegally, and because these trials were held at night. So what we see here in John 18, 15 to 40 are different trials actually. From it we will look at three different groups of people responding differently to Jesus. Okay, so three different groups are that we're going to look at this morning. The religious crowd, the Pharisees, the high priests. The second group that we're going to look at is the irreligious governor, Pilate. And finally, we're going to look at Peter, the cowardly disciple. So first of all, the religious crowd. And these were the high priests and the Pharisees. Now, first of all, I'm going to say, as I said before, the trials that they're doing here was illegal because, these are the people, the high priests and the Pharisees, these are the people who're supposed to uphold the law. These are the people who're supposed to uphold justice. Yet, they arrested Jesus at night with hundreds of soldiers and then taken him into trials at night. You see? So only in the morning, as we read, that they delivered Jesus to the Roman governor at that time, which is Pilate. So it's an irony, isn't it, for someone, for the religious group of people who's supposed to uphold the law and to show justice, yet they did this to Jesus illegally. It's one of the serious hypocrisy that we can see in their lives. One thing also that we see that clearly is they're supposed to be the group of people who are serious about purity and about spiritual purity. So Passover is actually not a day, it's actually a 7 to 8 days festival. Lots of meals, they need to be ceremonially clean during this time. They cannot be unclean. If they're unclean, then they cannot partake in the Passover meals. Okay, so this is the hypocrisy. If we read in verse 28, it says this: as they delivered Jesus to Pilate, verse 28, they then led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. So they've been integrating Jesus for like whole night since he was arrested. They themselves, these are the crowd, the religious crowd, did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. They say, like, after all the illegal things they did, the illegal trial, they say, we want to be pure. We don't want to enter the governor's house so we can be clean. Do you see the irony there? See, they want to be pure, yet what they did to Jesus is anything but. So they want to be pure for the Passover, yet they rejected Jesus, the very fulfillment of Passover in the Bible. If you trace the story of Passover, Jesus is the climax of that. All the Passover in the Old Testament pointing to Jesus, yet they say, I want to be pure. We want to be pure for the Passover that the Bible tells us about, yet they crucified him. They brought him to trial. They want to kill him. See, if you're not familiar, the Passover began in the desert when God saved God's people from Egypt, especially the firstborn. The Passover talk about the firstborn being spared. Let's look at that briefly from Exodus 12:13. So the Israelites in that time, the first Passover, were to smear animal bloods on their doorposts so that when the angel come, they will pass over the house of God's people so that their firstborn will be spared. Okay, so it says this, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." So that's the first Passover, and they are all pointing to Jesus. So by being religious, the high priest and the Pharisees, they have missed God completely. Not by being irreligious, but by being religious. You see, they want to be pure, they said, yet they have missed God completely. Now, there's a distinction between a Christian and a religious person. So when I say religious crowd, I make a clear distinction. I want to make it clear that these are not Christians. There's a clear distinction between a religious person and a Christian person. See, why do religious people here want to please God? Why do they want to be pure, so to speak? Why do they want to observe all these religious things? Well, so that God would favor them, so that God would bless them, you see. So that's why they observe all these things. They want to be pure. They want to get God's favor. They want to be on God's side, so to speak, so that they find God's blessing in their life. So the question for all of us this morning is, are you a Christian or are you just a religious person? Do you become Christian? Ask yourself, do you become a Christian? If you are a Christian, do you become a Christian so that you can have God on your side and you can say to God and pray to God and God will dispense His blessing on your life? Is that why you become a Christian? So that you know when you pray, God will listen to you and give you the things that you ask of Him? Are you faithful in service to God because you seek to gain from being a Christian? See, if you are, then you too have missed God, just like the high priests and the Pharisees, because they treat God like an ATM machine, where they put the card in, they punch the pin, the correct pin number, say the right prayer, and off comes out the money. See, these are how the Pharisees and the religious people live their life. They think they know how to pull the strings with God. They know the right pin number. They are strict to the dot. That's why they want to be pure. Because they realize if they have just missed one digit, God will not dispense the blessing. But Christians are not like that. Maybe you come and say to me, no, I'm a Christian. I don't want nothing from God. I'm not like them. See, think about this. Ask yourself this. How about when you miss that promotion that you've been waiting for so long that you know you deserve? Or when you were diagnosed with a disease that is incurable? How about when your loved one died tragically? Or when you don't get what you want after praying to God for many, many years? How do you feel about that? If you are disappointed with God, even bitter with God, when that happened in your life, then your service to God is no different to these high priests and these Pharisees. Because you say, I've been doing all this part to you, Lord. I've been doing my part as a good Christian. Now you have not come through in doing your part for me. You get bitter, you get disappointed with God. Then we're no different to this religious crowd. So that's the religious crowd. The second group of people that we see here in this passage is the non-religious person, the irreligious governor by the name of Pilate. So after the trial, the illegal trial at night, they handed Jesus over to Pilate. They just escorted him because the reason is this. They explain because they cannot execute Jesus. The Roman prohibit the Jews to exercise capital punishment. So if they want capital punishment, which they seek on Jesus, they have to get the Romans to do it for them. So this is what they did. They ushered Jesus, handed Jesus over to Pilate. Now, Pilate doesn't care about religions. He's irreligious. He doesn't care about being pure, unlike the religious group. But just like the religious group, however, he cares about something too. What does he care about? Let's look at from verse 33 to 38. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world." Then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" So Pilate's concern here is, about Jesus, whether or not Jesus has an army to mount a revolt. So Pilate cares about power, about control. So that's all he cares about. That's why he said, "Are you a king?" Jesus said, "If I am of this world, then I wouldn't be here, would I? My people would be here fighting." In fact, if you read what came before last week, we see how Jesus voluntarily handed himself over. So Jesus said, I'm not like what these people accuse me of. Otherwise, my people would have fight for me. So Pilate questions basically say, "I don't care about what these people say. Just tell me if you are a king. Whether you're going to mount a revolt, whether you have an army to fight us." That's all he cares about, power. So when Jesus explained that his kingdom is not of this world, Pilate is relieved. He's happy. He's ready to set Jesus free. He said, "Well, that's not my problem. He doesn't have an army. He's not a king. He has no threat against me." So Pilate is ready. As soon as that, Pilate's ready to set him free. So but however, the religious crowd is not ready for that. They still want to see Jesus executed. See, when you are someone who is concerned about power, about having power, there's another tendency that comes with that. That is the tendency to please people. If you are concerned about having power in your life, then you will also possibly have a tendency to please people. Now, Pilate tried to show this, that he has power by trying to please the people, the crowd. He tried to do it by exercising his power. He tried to please them by saying, "Well, it's your custom that, during Passover, we, the Roman, release a prisoner for you." So he showed that he has power by exercising it, by pleasing people. "I can release a prisoner for you. Should I release Jesus?" Jesus, on the other hand, interestingly, the one who holds true power, did not choose to exercise it. He relinquished his power, voluntarily being handed over to the authority. He showed his power by not exercising his power. So Jesus has nothing to prove, you see. He has nothing to prove. He can love people rather than pleasing them and using people like Pilate. When you are so obsessed with power, you have this tendency to please people. What you do is you always think about, is this good for me from the other person's point of view? What will these other people think of me? Will I gain favor from doing this? And that's what in Pilate's mind. But in Jesus' mind, the one who holds true power, he said, "I don't need to exercise my power." So Pilate to say to Jesus in verse 38, very interestingly, when Jesus said, I came to witness about the truth, to tell people about the truth. And Pilate said, what is truth? You know, when you're so obsessed about power, sometimes you ignore what is truth. You don't care so much about truth because power is what you want. You want to please others so that you have control of them, but you don't care so much about truth. He cares more about what the crowd think of him, you see, rather than holding up the truth, justice. So you and I can be like Pilate when we care more about our own reputation, what people think of us, than the truth. And when you do that, when we live like that, you will use people for your gain in your life. You will use them for your benefit. Because you will not be able to love people without an agenda. Now that's a hard thing to do, to love people without an agenda. See, the stronger you are as a person. This is the tendency, right? The stronger you are as a person, the more secure you are in your own strength. See, you know how children, as they grow up into adulthood, they often try to prove that I'm not a kid anymore. They try to prove themselves that they are now a grown up, right? If you're a grown up like me, if you're, you have 40s, you don't have to tell people like, I'm a grown up, you don't have to prove yourself. You are a grown up. The stronger you are as a person, the more secure you are in your own strength. That's what we see in Jesus. However, the opposite is true as well. The weaker you are, the more you want the world to see who you really are. The more you need to prove yourself to others. And this is exactly what Pilate is doing. Because he thinks he has power, but Jesus is showing him, no, you don't. If you have power, that's because God the Father, my Father, gave that to you. However, before we are quick to judge Pilate here, we could be just like him, you see. We could be just like him. Regardless of age, whether you are young or old, we love to prove ourselves to others. We love to prove ourselves how good we are to others. And that's our problem. The next thing I want to look at, what Pilate did here is an act of grace. Right, in verse 38, let's look at that. After he had said this, he went back. So this is the reason, right? He went back in and out. He went back in to speak to Jesus. He went out to speak to the crowd because the crowd, the religious crowd, they do not want to be defiled. They want to be pure. They want to eat the Passover meal. So they don't want to enter the Pilate's house and be defiled. So this is what we read, Pilate in and out. And then now, after I said this, he went back outside after he talked to Jesus. He went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no fault in him, no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews? And they cried out again, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. So this is an act of grace from someone who has no power. You want to release a prisoner, a criminal. See, Barabbas, the name Barabbas means the son of the Father. The son of the Father. Now, this Barabbas over here in John says that he was a robber. But if we look at other gospel like Luke, he did a lot more. He did an insurrection, murder. So he did a lot of other numerous crimes. So he's as guilty as he can be. Yet, this religious crowd, they said, release him instead. We want Barabbas, the son of the Father, to be released. See, sometimes when we are given with a choice between truth and power, what do we choose? Pilate chose power over truth. He said, what is truth? For us, it should be an obvious one. We should choose truth, right? But oftentimes we don't. Oftentimes, how? Well, when we choose to keep our mouth shut about our faith, If you're a Christian, when you choose to keep your mouth shut about your faith so that you may get a promotion, because you know you work in an environment that do not tolerate people who is serious about their faith in Christianity, because they think Christianity a religion of bigotry. So you hide your faith when you choose to shut your mouth about your faith in your workplace so that you get that promotion. You have chosen power over truth. You see, in this day and age, you may lose your job for opening your mouth about who you are and what you believe. And we read that numerous times in the paper and hear that in the news, where people refuse to compromise on the teaching of the Bible and they get the sack. These are the people who choose truth over power. But yet how many times we choose power over truth? So in relationship even, not just in workplace, in relationship, when you choose to have sexual relationship outside marriage, so that you don't lose the relationship. Because you think if you don't, then you might lose her or him. And in business, if you're business owners, you choose to cut corners because you want to earn more profit. When you do that, you have chosen power over truth. So that's the second group of people, the irreligious people. Now the third group is the most popular ones that if you heard this passage being preached, people focus on this one, Peter. Now, let's look at Peter, the cowardly disciple. So this is chapter 18. Back in chapter 13, Jesus had an interesting conversation with him and with Peter, because he has just told Peter, that he would do anything for Jesus, even if it means dying for Jesus. That's what he said to Jesus. And Jesus said this in verse 38, chapter 13. Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow until you have denied me 3 times." He said, "You will not die for me. You will deny me. You will deny knowing me 3 times." So a few chapters later, now we're in John 18. That is exactly what happened to Peter, and that's what we read. He denied Jesus 3 times. So the first time in verse 17, it says, "The servant girl at the door said to Peter," this is a little girl. This is not a big giant Roman soldier. "Are you one of the disciple?" Threatening way. No, this is a little girl. Probably half the size of Peter. Said, innocently, cutely. I imagine my little daughter saying that, you see. "Are you one of the disciples?" Say, "I am not." That's what he said. And the second time, now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. So they said to him, "You also are not one of the disciples, are you?" He denied it and said, "I am not." That's the second time. The third time, one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had just cut off in chapter 13, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him? I'm sure you cut my cousin's ear off." Peter again denied it. That's the third time. And at once a rooster crowed. Peter said, "I am not, I am not, I am not." Such a contrast, isn't it? Such a contrast of his bold assessment of his faith and strength and loyalty and faithfulness to Jesus to this. Can you imagine the shame? This is Peter, the pillar of Christian faith, one of the pillars of Christian faith. Can you imagine the shame he had to face forsaking Jesus when it really matters? See, most scholars believe in verse 16, we can read about the other disciple who was there with Peter. And the other disciple, most scholars believe, are John, the writer of this gospel. So John's there writing this very account because he was there, right? Can you imagine what must have come to Peter's mind speaking to John, writing this? It's like, perhaps, this is I'm imagining, perhaps Peter was asking John, John, come on, could you please just leave out some of the details? That embarrassing one. We're buddies, aren't we? That's so easy to do because of the shame. But rather, when he knowingly let his best friend Jesus down, we can read this account 2,000 years later. Millions of people have read this account. I hope you can see the embarrassment, the shame that Peter has to endure. Yet he did. Now, when you look at these three groups of people, which one can you associate more? The religious crowd who is very faithful, never miss a church service, always the first to put your hands up when I said we need a volunteer to do this. You never miss a day reading your Bible. Or you are the irreligious one who doesn't care about anything religious. Or you are like Peter, a disciple who failed Jesus again and again. Which one are you? Well, I hope you don't say to me, I'm neither. I'm the strong one, man. What are you talking about? I'm the one who where Peter's supposed to be. The faithful one. See, if you think you are like that, I know there's a temptation to think that we have the right balance between not overly religious, but yet we are faithful to Jesus. When you feel you are like that, you have the perfect balance, then let Peter be a reminder for us, because in chapter 13, that's where Peter was. He said, Jesus, wherever you go, I will go. I will do anything. Even if I have to sacrifice myself for you, I will do it. See, he overestimated his faithfulness. As a result, when the trial comes his way in chapter 18, he wasn't ready. So what is your attitude? What do you think one of these three, which one are you? Is your attitude, it's like bring it on when trial comes, bring it on? Is that your attitude? It's like when you see other Christians fall, you say well, what's wrong with them? You think you are the strong one, you will never be tempted, you will be faithful. Is that you? See, there's a temptation, you see, when you see others fall, great Christian men and women fall. When you read about them in the newspaper, what goes through your mind is what's wrong with them? Rather than, I can be just like that. See, that's another attitude, isn't it? Because Peter should teach us that if we don't guard our heart, that could be me. That could be you. So when something happens, when we are faced with this, we should pray to God and say, God, I could be just like that. Help me. We should humble ourselves and search our own heart. What we see here, what Jesus did, we can see the turning around of Peter. We'll look at this soon. And we can only see that what happened to Peter later on is because of what Christ done, what Jesus did for him. See, when Pilate tried to show grace by bribing the people, the crowd, see, Jesus did it the other way. At the center of Christianity is the gospel. And that gospel is all about grace, right? So Pilate tried to do that, to show grace by bribing people. God's grace here is shown by not condemning Peter of his unfaithfulness. No, God's grace say, I will not condemn you for your unfaithfulness, of his cowardice. Instead, God's grace enabled Peter to move past his mistakes. I know it's not clear here yet, but I don't want to spoil too much because that's at the end of the Gospel of John we will come to. But just trust me in this. You can read ahead at home. If you don't trust me, you shouldn't actually. You just read yourself and see how God's grace in Peter's life enabled Peter to turn around and to say to John, John, write whatever you want to write, mate, as clearly as you can, as precise and as accurate as you can about me. Spare no details. Leave out no details. Write every single word. See, the Gospels give us strength to see past our mistakes or shame. Perhaps some of you are still holding on to that shame and the mistakes that you did in the past. And the Gospel of God says this, you can see past that because God, Jesus himself, took our shame with him to the cross. You don't need to cover it up. Peter didn't cover it up. You don't need to be ashamed of it. Peter wasn't ashamed of it. So how did Peter move past his shame? I'm going to just talk quickly. In the Bible, after the Gospel of John, you'll find Acts of the Apostles. Now, in the Acts of the Apostles, this is when Jesus ascended back to the Father. Peter played an important role in the early church and the early growth of Christianity. He preached boldly to thousands of people, and thousands of people received and believed in Jesus Christ. That's the new Peter, you see. And people will listen to him, to his testimony. He was faithful till the end. And some scholars believe that Peter died a martyr because of his faith. And he was crucified just like his Lord. But instead of being crucified normally, he was crucified upside down. That's how Peter died. The question, how is it possible from someone who is a cowardly disciple like Peter, who denied his Lord when his Lord needed him, to become someone so bold, even dying on the cross, to be crucified on the cross upside down? How was it possible? How can a cowardly disciple become a faithful disciple? Sometimes we are a coward when we choose power over truth, right? When we choose so that people liked us rather than telling them that, no, I can't do that because I'm a Christian. How can we do that? See, a disciple that is a betrayal that turned into a passion for his Lord. A shame that turned to the fuel, the very fuel of his ministry. See, I just want to say this. If it is possible for Peter, it's only because of what Jesus did for him. See, on the cross, what happened is Jesus took that shame upon himself for Peter. See, as painful as physical crucifixion is, it is the most painful, the most excruciating punishment reserved for the worst kind of criminal, that cross, crucifixion. The shame perhaps was worse for Jesus. Let me try to explain this. Have you ever been embarrassed in public? I once watched perhaps more than once, a video clip, perhaps you have too, where a couple was dining out, and then suddenly the woman get upset, pick up the glass of water. You know what happened next, right? She throw that cup of water in his face and slap him hard in his face and walk away. Is that more shame, embarrassment for the man, or pain on his cheek? I would say the embarrassment. I would say the shame. Now, if he's nobody, when you watch that tube and I don't even know this guy, perhaps you think like nobody knows me. But imagine everyone in the restaurants and everyone who watched that video knows him. Know him to be someone who is supposedly to be a good person, who is faithful to his spouse. Would that increase or lessen the embarrassment? We all know that would increase the embarrassment because of the stature of who he is. He's an important person. He's not supposed to cheat on his spouse. He got caught out for the world to see. So when Jesus, who is perfect, who do not deserve death on the cross like a criminal, took that himself on the cross, that's why most scholars say it is a lot of shame. As much as the pain is excruciating, the shame was unbearable. So that's what Jesus did on the cross for Peter. And not just for Peter, but for you as well, so that you can move past all your past shame and embarrassment and mistakes and live for Jesus. See, Jesus just declared earlier in the chapter 18, when he declared himself that he is God. Remember how he declared himself to be God? He simply say, I am. Remember that? Where Jesus say that I am, Peter denied. He said, I am not. And I believe there's a lot of truth in that for us. A lot of times we want to be I am with our lives. We want to be in power. We say I am as if we can control our lives. As if we determine the fate of our lives. Let me tell you, your life may be on beautiful track right now. Career is looking great, family is looking awesome. You just take one phone call for all that to collapse in your life. A phone call that you have no control of. For all the beautiful things that you have in your life to collapse. The control and the power that we think we have when we think I am, perhaps we should take the positions of Peter and say, I am not. The Bible teaches us only Him is powerful. Only Him who has the true power. Only Him is God. We are not. For God to be crucified, it is shame beyond our imagination. Jesus took our shame upon Himself so that you don't have to be. And that's how Peter can move on. He saw Jesus took upon his shame. So if you want to the same, you want to live for Christ, if you want to move past your shame and embarrassment, look no further. Look at Jesus. Not Barabbas, the fake son of the Father, but the true Son of the Father, big S, big F, who took away your shame by being shamed on the cross. So to the degree that you see Jesus has covered your shame on the cross, you can move past your failures and shame and live for truth without fear of rejection in your life. Let us pray.
Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. Turn your eyes to the hillside, where justice and mercy embraced. There the Son of God gave His life for us, and our measureless debt was erased. Jesus, to you we lift our eyes. Jesus, our glory and our prize. We adore you, behold you, a Savior ever true. Oh Jesus, we turn our eyes to you. Turn your eyes to the morning and see Christ the Lion away. What a glorious dawn, fear of death is gone, for we carry His life in our veins. Jesus, to you we lift our eyes. Jesus, our glory and our prize. We adore you, behold you, our Savior ever true. Oh Jesus, we turn our eyes to you. Turn your eyes to the heavens. Our King will return for his own. Every knee will bow, every tongue will shout. Oh, glory to Jesus alone. Jesus, to you we lift our eyes. Jesus, the glory and our prize. We adore you, behold you, our Savior ever true. Oh Jesus, we turn our eyes to you. Oh Jesus, we turn our eyes to you.